ransomware is concerned, I will just touch upon it in a different manner. See, when the attackers, when they are trying to look for the targets, initially, unless there is a crown jewel which they are looking for, which may be the case, which will not be there. No, they are just scanning the entire net, and wherever they find the weak spots, they try to get into it. Now, this can be mostly with the companies who are not concentrating towards cybersecurity. It can be towards the startups, where the focus is to get the business running, and the cybersecurity takes the least priority. Whenever your data is going out of your own premises or out of your own systems, it has to be, there has to be a proper accountability with the third-party vendor when you are dealing. Firstly, you have to see what kind of data you are sharing. It has to be need-based. So generally, when it is basically when you do API integrations, generally the tendency is that you may be having a set of data, and for some purpose that data is required to be shared with the third party. Generally, the tendency is to send the entire data and then they extract whatever is required. But the data is lying with the vendor, complete data. What you should do is, what is the minimum data which can suffice for the role which you have assigned or the task which you have assigned to the third party vendor? Share only that much.
Great. Welcome, Jitendra, for our Cybersecurity webinar series. It's our privilege to have you on the call. You have an esteemed background. We would love to hear your journey so far and what is it that you're up to. And we'll be also introducing our company very briefly. So, Jitendra, could you please share a few words about your journey so far and what is it that you're doing nowadays?
Yeah, hi, Pramod. Good morning, and good morning, everyone in Team Sera. I am Jitendra Tripathi. I am presently the Vice President and lead of the cybersecurity operations at Reliance Jio. And presently, I don't have to introduce Jio to you. Prior to this, I have had a long career, almost 3 decades of career in the Indian Army, where I was in the communications branch. And I have an experience of fielding and deploying and managing communications and information systems in the Indian Army, both during peacetime and during operations. And as far as education background is concerned, I have done my master's in telecommunication engineering from IISc Bangalore. And I also have a master's in public administration, may not be related to this field. And I'm a certified CISA and a certified CISO. That's a brief introduction about myself.
Thank you, Jitendra. This is fantastic. We are Cybersecurity, and our company has been formed essentially to help more companies in the market to deal with cyber risk effectively. So, this comes off the background of my co-founder and I, where over the past decade, we've been dealing with breaches and, a lot of cyber risk within our respective journeys. So we found that there's a big problem that needs to be addressed. And that's why we have put together a business and built a platform to help companies, manage cyber risk and solve cyber risk, broadly speaking. Today's call is all about you, actually, Jitendra. We would love to understand what is the kind of cyber risk that you are seeing in the market broadly. It doesn't have to be geo-specific, but if you want to share challenges you're facing at Jio, do feel free to share as well. That will be our first question for you.
Yeah, so I would basically talk about the risk which is there in general in the market. Primarily, if you see, after this pandemic, almost any business which could go online, or even the part of the business could go online, people have moved on. And the online businesses have matured, but from the operations perspective. Now, along with that comes the risk, the cyber risk. And what I see that even the companies which are into IT-enabled services and such like companies, where you may find people who are technologically more adept, even there the understanding of cybersecurity is very less, because operations people are primarily more concerned about delivery, more concerned about putting the business up, delivering whatever they are responsible for. So cybersecurity always takes backseat, and unless there is someone who is there to drive information security, generally it gets left out. And this is across the board. It is not only with the startups or the new companies, it is even with the most mature and the most companies which have been there into business for whatever time. That is the thing I see, that cybersecurity has to be, actually enforced. And that thing comes only when there is a sponsorship right from the top board leadership. Because we all understand that for an operations guy, it can actually be a hindrance. He may consider it to be a hindrance, or things getting delayed. So that is where people have to be brought on board, and they have to understand how cybersecurity is actually going to align with the operational goals and with the business goals. And in the long run, it is going to be good.
Thank you for sharing, Jitendra. You touched on some very important points, especially buy-in from the top. Everybody has to, at the top, be clear what is cyber risk, the threats it poses to the business, and start being in position to address some of these threats. In our experience so far, what we are seeing is on the other side, which is the enemy side, you have organized nation states with high ranking, all kinds of ranking officials who are actively preparing loads which will penetrate systems via open ports. To teenagers who are sitting in parents' homes, just playing around and figuring out how to bring companies down. And the industry on the cyber threat actor side has become so organized that even ransomware is being sold as a service. People can just go and download ransomware and deploy it in their company's tech stack and start to extort money or exfiltrate data from these companies. Have you witnessed some of these things in your work so far? And how do you think about defending against them when you go about your work? Do you have any views around this?
Yeah, see, as ransomware is concerned, I will just touch upon it in a different manner. See, when the attackers, when they are trying to look for the targets, initially, unless there is a crown jewel which they are looking for, which may be the case, which you will not be aware. No, they are just scanning the entire net, and wherever they find the weak spots, they try to get into it. Now, this can be mostly with the companies who are not concentrating towards cybersecurity. It can be towards the startups, where the focus is to get the business running, and the cybersecurity takes the least priority. Now, once they get into it, with the startups particularly, there can be, most of the innovations are happening with the startups. There can be issue of the intellectual property. You may be having very crucial customer data, which is there, which can be, which the attackers can get hold of, and then they can actually sell it. As you said, ransomware as a service. Ransomware is a different issue. They're even selling the customer data of companies. So what actually is required, I have come across a number of cases where this kind of things have happened. So, and how exactly to go about it, defending it is, it is a whole ecosystem we have to put in place. You have to start, every company has to start assessing its risk first. It has to be, you possibly cannot protect anything and everything. The budget is always less when it comes to cybersecurity, right? So you need to identify your risks, do a risk analysis, see what are the threats which are there, how likely they are likely to happen, and how they are going to impact your business if it strikes. And based on that, you have to put your controls in place so that this kind of thing can be avoided. Now, there are a number of steps which, as we go forward, we can keep talking about as to how we can go about securing the business.
Thank you, Jitendra. There is a part here you mentioned, which is ecosystem. I'd like to build on that. No one person can solve cyber risk by themselves. Each company has limited budget, limited resources. Even if you put a team and sizable budget around this, as I'm sure you're doing at Jio, it's difficult to completely manage cyber risk and solve for it, right? This ecosystem approach that you mentioned, can you share more about your thoughts around this? Are you referring to a regulatory environment being supportive of companies, managing their security posture, data information security policies?
Yes,
properly?
yes. So what I'm talking about is, see, if cybersecurity is not your core business, as a business, you would like to concentrate on whatever is a core activity, but then cybersecurity has to be done. So that part you can outsource to a company which provides managed security services, right? But a word of caution there that you can only outsource the activity. The responsibility and the accountability still remains with you, right? So in your organization, firstly, right from the top leadership downwards, you have to nominate someone who takes responsibility for cybersecurity and who is held accountable for it. In a bigger companies, you may have CISOs. In smaller companies, and it can be one of the directors or somebody who's made responsible for it. So that at least when your brainstorming is happening, cybersecurity is there at the back of it. He, at least if nobody else, he prioritizes cybersecurity, and he becomes the sponsor for cybersecurity. Having done that, having thought about it, then you can decide how exactly you want to go about securing your business. The best way would be, firstly, whatever business is there, in case you can move to the cloud, there is nothing like it, because cloud providers themselves by default, they provide some kind of a cyber security. And if you buy their security services, they can even secure even more. And then thereafter, you can have an MSS provider who can work along with you on the cloud to secure your business.
What about your vendors? So for your own for the business itself, you highlighted a couple of ways that you can secure the crown jewels and grow the security posture. Now there's a whole set of companies that are serving the enterprise, right? Which is your business. This is a long tail of supply chain risk, essentially, where they might be managing your data. There might be a consultant deployed on your premise, or it could be a company that is providing a service to you, like an analytics tool. And if they get breached and they're holding your customers' information, you are the data custodian, and so you'll be held liable. You mentioned liable and accountable, right? So
Yes.
how do you solve for supply chain risk?
See, whenever your data is going out of your own premises or out of your own systems, it has to be, there has to be a proper accountability with the third party vendor when you are dealing. Firstly, you have to see what kind of data you are sharing. It has to be need based. So generally, when it is basically when you do API integrations, generally the tendency is that you may be having a set of data with you. And for some purpose, that data is required to be shared with the third party. Generally, the tendency is to send the entire data and then they extract whatever is required. But the data is lying with the vendor, the complete data. What you should do is, what is the minimum data which can suffice for the role which you have assigned, or the task which you have assigned to the third party vendor? Share only that much. Just need based data sharing should be there. And then obviously you have to audit the service provider as to how exactly he's securing the data, whether data at rest or data in transit, and there should be your PI data or the sensitive data. Firstly, there should not be a risk of any data getting lost. And in the worst case, even if it gets compromised, how exactly your customer data is available to the, if it is actually secured and encrypted, kept encrypted, the loss may not be, the impact may not be that much. So obviously you have to audit, and the vendor has to demonstrate that he is able to keep the data secure. Because ultimately it boils down to the brand of the company which has outsourced that data, right?
Yes, absolutely. This word audit that you used, it's an audit that you are doing on the company, or do you want to see some kind of certification that the company has, for example, ISO?
Yeah, see, it can happen. You may have your own internal auditors who can audit it, but if there are far too many third-party vendors, it may not be possible to audit all of them. Then they can always share, demonstrate that they have been audited by authorized auditors, and that should suffice.
Got it. And what about your own enterprise? So do you run your own audits? Do you engage third-party auditors? What is your preference?
So for like any other big business, you have to have your internal audits and you have to have external audits. So we follow that.
So, Jitendra, this is it's very good what you're sharing, because you're very closely following best practices, right? What we are seeing from our point of view is that in certain economies, when regulation is strong, companies tend to behave a lot more differently when, as compared to economies where regulation may not be very strong. So in India, I think for cybersecurity, the climate is becoming stronger, but it's not as strong as say how it is in the US or it is in Singapore, right? Within this climate, if you're working with a large set of vendors who may not necessarily take cybersecurity very seriously because rightly they're focusing on their business, they're focusing on going to market, they're trying to earn more revenue. How do you manage these guys? Right? Do you subject them to a different threshold? Do you look at them differently?
So as I told you, we would like that particular business should have some kind of a certification. Like you said, I mean, we may not be having frameworks in India, but there are international frameworks available. Generally, people follow the NIST framework or the ISO framework, whichever. Some framework they have to follow, and they have to demonstrate that they have been audited for the cybersecurity, and they are able to demonstrate that they are secure enough and we can do business.
Got it. Thank you for sharing. I want to switch gears also to within the enterprise. One of the most common reasons why enterprises get compromised is because somebody clicks a bad link, right? They get phished. How do you look at that risk from your CISO hat perspective, and how do you try to make that as close to zero as possible?
See, the basic thing is firstly is this kind of thing, phishing thing has to be, you can put as many technical controls as possible. But if people have to click, they will click. So best thing is to make them aware, right? So cybersecurity awareness for all the employees, whether they are in the organization with whatever they are dealing. Ultimately, anybody who is accessing your systems, whether for personal use or any manner, they have to go through this cybersecurity. We conduct some kind of quizzes every year, and people have to be aware. So cybersecurity awareness programs are there which are run, and that is how the employees are made aware. What are the kind of risks which can be there, and what precautions do they have to take in their personal capacities? Like, do not click on any, do not open any unsolicited mail. Do not click on any link. If you find that there is some kind of a mail which has come to you which is suspect, you please inform the CERT, our own CERT, internal CERT, so that we can act on it and we can accordingly take permissions. And then besides that, the basic cybersecurity controls which are there for spam filtering and other things, those are obviously definitely there. Any kind of suspicious links, those are definitely put in place.
So this is proactive. You're being proactive about.
Yes, we have to. Yeah.
How about the reactive side? Let's say somebody clicks a bad link, data starts getting compromised. What can we do to be in a position to recover quickly from there?
Generally, their controls are such that we have not come across. Even if somebody has clicked, we have controls in place that we get alerted, and the data actually gets blocked, but we still get alerted. We have got very strict policies. Like only the whitelisted domains can be accessed through the proxies. Anything else gets blocked. So once you get a hit on the proxy that a malicious domain or something which has got hit, we investigate. It can be through this kind of a click which has happened, or it may be somebody trying to visit and inadvertently has clicked that link. So we come to know, investigate. We have put systems in place that even if someone clicks a link by mistake, the data doesn't go out.
Okay, so this is clicking by mistake. There's also that risk in cybersecurity where it's called the disgruntled employee, somebody who is not happy with how things are and they are looking to compromise the stack from within, right? Is there any kind of controls that you have in mind for such a group?
Yeah. See, the first thing you see that data leak prevention, DLP systems are there. So suppose somebody is there, he tries to send out something, the system will detect it. Someone tries to encrypt something and send it without the knowledge of his managers, that will get detected. Also, the other controls which are there inside, that in case someone tries to do any activity which is not supposed to do, trying to scan the network, trying to fire certain things through the browser which is not supposed to do. So we have got whatever we detect over the internet, we detect that internally as well. And then we take necessary actions, we investigate it. And in case something is found, we confront that individual as to why did he do it.
Yes.
And in case there is a legitimate reason, then it is closed. Otherwise, we take suitable action.
So far, there is, for you to be able to do what you're doing, you have to be empowered with a team and a set of a considerable amount of budget, to execute on the tooling that you want to put in place, the kind of processes you want to invest in, the kind of policies you want to build out. We are very keen to understand, how do you think about building a team, a cyber team, right? There's an aspect which is building a cyber team for a big org. But if you have a view for building a cyber team, broadly speaking, do feel free to share as well.
All right. So it will all depend in case you want to have your own integral cyber team. That's what exactly you want to know.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. So firstly, you have to understand what are the various functions within the cybersecurity which are there. Now, based on that, you have to get your team up. Like broadly, I would say there are 5-6 functions which offhand I can recall. Maybe I miss out on a couple of them. Firstly, it has to be the audit and compliance. The compliance is the first, right? There has to be a team which will be looking at the compliance issues and the audit issues. Then there would be a team which will be doing the vulnerability management and vulnerability assessment, right? And then obviously there will be, in case you are doing your own application security assessments, then there will be an application security team which will do the assessment of the applications and from the coding point of view and also of the architecture. So if it is a larger business, you can have an architecture security and a separate application security. Then finally, you have your security operations center, which after all the controls have been put in place, you need to have people to keep monitoring the environment and detect in case there is anything malicious happening and take suitable actions. So these are about 4 or 5 functions which are there. Keeping that in mind, you will have to get your team up and running. Now it will depend what is the size of the business, what is the size of the team. In case it is a bigger business, you will have a separate vertical for each of these. In case it's a small team, a small business, maybe one person can don multiple hats within this. So basically, you have to organize your cybersecurity team on these lines. This is from the human resource perspective. If we want to talk about the technical controls, putting up an SIM and integration of the log sources, that also we can talk about in case.
Yes, Jitendra, want to talk about that. Just before that, want to talk about, you have highlighted functions that we need to have in place, which is very important. And I think our audience will really benefit from your clarity of thought here. How do you then empower this team to go about being successful? And most folks actually view cyber as you are going to stop me from doing my work, right? That's what some of the other folks think. So how do we make it such that you fit into the process, like sugar fits into water, right? But it makes the water sweet.
Yeah,
job gets done. Yes.
So as I told you initially, it has to be, the buy-in has to be from the top leadership. There can be a committee, whatever you may like to call it, which sponsors the cybersecurity thing, and you put your cybersecurity policies in place. That is the first thing. And once those policies are approved by the leadership team, and or there can be a cybersecurity forum, what different names different companies give it. And once those cybersecurity policies are approved, thereafter everyone in the organization knows what is he expected to do. I mean, it will list out what exactly is to be done to secure the business and what are the processes involved and whose ownership is it to do various functions. So first thing is to put a cybersecurity policies in place and which has the approval of authority from the leadership.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, and then obviously the CISO who's there, who's going to get it implemented, has to coordinate with his peers, with the other leaders, and make sure that this program, he has to have a cybersecurity program, and he sees that this program is actually aligned with the business goals. Right. So you have to, as I said, it is, when I say it is risk-based analysis, you have to first identify what are your important business processes. Then what are your IT processes which are supporting these business processes? And for that, how exactly the cybersecurity is going to get aligned. So ultimately, so that whatever you do, it is ultimately supporting your business processes and hence the business code. So that is how people will understand that cybersecurity is actually helping them out, and it is not a obstruction, not a hindrance.
Thank you for sharing. I think this is a great intro for folks to get started and start building up on this, right? Jitendra, you have also spent a considerable amount of time in the armed forces in India. We are seeing a development globally where, for example, in Singapore, it is setting up a separate service, which is called the Digital and Intelligence Service, which is to handle cyber risk. And this service is going to sit equally alongside the Army, Navy, and the Air Force. And our Defense Minister, Ng Eng Han, has said in Parliament that our future Chief of Defense Force can come from this service, which is a digital and intelligence service. This is a possibility, right? So much importance is being given to cyber risk from a government context, from a country context. Just wanted to understand your point of view in two areas. One is, do you see governments globally becoming a lot more serious about cyber risk? And what is the impact do you feel there's going to be on the private sector?
Yeah. So if you see, since we have got the defense of the nation in picture, see, ultimately, see what used to happen. See, whatever the wars which were fought in the past for things, which are scarce, it was either, it was initially it was agrarian society. It used to be for for land. We have also seen certain wars which have happened for water, right? If you see Shatal Arab between Iran and Iraq, and such like things are there. So now today, I will just instead of today, if you see what is important, it is the information which is the most important, right? So the future wars are going to be fought for securing information, and they will also be fought with information weapons. Now, once that happens, it is not going to differentiate between the military and the civil and the public or the private. If it is internet, if a nation state, if your adversary is attacking, he may not be able to get to the military networks directly, because those networks may be air gap.
Yes.
But the nation as such, you don't have to wage a war on the or you don't have to bring down the military networks. Imagine your the national networks which are there, simple like your transportation networks, your airlines, your railways, your power systems. These could be by both public or private. Now, suppose this kind of networks are brought down, it is going to create mayhem in the country. The governments can be brought down because of this. So that is why today when you're talking of the national defense, it is, and we're talking about the defense of the national critical information infrastructure. It includes everything, and in countries and even in India, you must have read about it, that we have got organizations which are there which earmark various sectors as national critical information infrastructure, and they may be public, they may be private, and they need to be secure. The telecom, the power sector, the transportation sector, all these need to be secured and defended. And once an attack happens, that is why the complete, I'll again say, there is a complete ecosystem in place. People have to collaborate. An attack coming on one organization, it has to quickly flow to the others that this kind of an attack is coming, and people can start taking actions. So that kind of a coordination is required. That is why we have the National Cybersecurity Coordinator in place.
Yes.
Right. Then there could be sector specific coordinators who are there. So obviously it has to play out in that manner.
Thank you for sharing, Jitendra. It's also the first time in our careers where we are seeing that nation states target not just other nation states or countries, but they go after the private sector as well. So if a company it may not be telecom in the banking sector or healthcare sector. It might be just developing some crucial IP, or there are people in there who are important folks. We see them getting targeted as well. So it definitely does boil down to your response, which is it's all encompassing. the ecosystem approach, where there is a strong partnership between the military and the private sector to handle cyber risk. We feel that the ecosystem is early and it's still, things are coming into place, but it's coming into place slowly. While we have an adversary on the other side that is rather organized and able to launch attacks, quite concurrently, quite simultaneously. They can even coordinate across borders as well. Do you have any thoughts around how companies can grow their security posture quickly in this current times, in the current climate that we're in? Any advice for us?
See, I'll tell you, you don't have to do things differently. Right? Any company, keep doing the things the way you are supposed to do. You have to do your basics right? The way you are required to secure your business, secure it. Only thing is, information sharing should happen. Now that information which is there in case any kind of an attack which has come, any kind of a targeted attack, any kind of a malware, ransomware, the IOCs which are there, that needs to be shared. So the government has to have an agency, a single point where people can share their this kind of information, and when everyone shares, that agency will have information from everybody, and then it shares it back to everyone else. Like these are the IOCs which are seeing in the networks, and please guard against it and put the controls in place. Either you have to block it or you have to detect it. So that kind of thing has to happen. So what I feel that businesses don't have to do anything differently. Only thing is they have to be forthcoming in sharing the information with the government and nation in whatever manner it is sought.
Thank you, Jitendra. This is good to know, and I think our audience will benefit from the past couple of questions that we have been asking. We'd like to take a pause. We are reaching the end of our podcast. One of the final questions that I have for you is, if you had a magic wand and you could wave it and get what you wanted in the world of cyber, what would you wish for? For it can be for enterprise, it can be for companies, big or small. What would you wish for? Excluding budget, everybody would love to have more budget.
Well, magic wand. There's no magic wand as far as cybersecurity is concerned. I mean, even if I come to that, long time back we heard, the most secure system is that you put you switch off your system and put it in a box, safe, tie it in something, and throw it in the deepest gorge in the ocean, and that is how your system can remain safe. Otherwise, it is all cat and mouse game. Cybersecurity, you have to keep doing it continuously. But yes, there is one thing which you want, which should be done, is that people should be made aware of cybersecurity. That means everybody and anybody in the organization should take cybersecurity very, very seriously. So to that extent, it is a shared responsibility. However, when it comes to accountability, every company should nominate a person to take ownership. Because as far as ownership or accountability is concerned, anything which is a shared responsibility, you can safely assume that it is nobody's responsibility. There has to be a person who is responsible, and in general, you make people aware. So cybersecurity awareness and training in general is the biggest thing which one can do it. That itself will reduce the risk by, if you have to quantify, more than half.
Very well noted. Everyone should take responsibility. Everyone should be made aware. But there should at least be one person or one team in the org that is accountable, right? Yeah. Thank you very much, Jitendra. With that, we have come to the end of our podcast, and we really appreciate the time that you have shared with us, the precious time that you have shared with us today. Thank you so much, Jitendra.
Thank you. Thank you so much.